I always laugh. Someone will say, Lyndsay, what's your 5-year plan? I'm like, oh, that's a horrible question to ask me. You know what I mean? Because 5 years ago, I would never have told you. 10 years ago, no clue. I would be living in Reno, Nevada, right?
Yeah.
Working in the mining industry. I didn't even know about the mining industry until about 15 years later. It was because I had a mentor who came into it,
Sure.
but I really didn't know much about it. And so in the last decade is really where I have come in and I thought I was going to leave after the first 2 years because, I tell people this, that, I left Texas in 2019, went to Denver to work for an old boss of mine, mentor, who worked in commercial real estate and land development with me. And she worked in the mining industry, but she knew that I had interest in getting out of Texas, essentially. I wanted to see what was out there. And working in accounting and finance, that skill set is very transferable into different industries.
Sure. Please help us welcome Lyndsay Wright to the face.
Warning, explicit content. This material may not be suitable for children. Listener discretion is advised.
Work all day. Nothing comes free. You gotta find a way. Gotta be willing to go put in some elbow grease. Cause you know nothing that you get in this life comes free. Gotta work.
Hello, miners. Hello, podcast listeners. Welcome into Mining Minds. Welcome in to the Utah Annual Association 110th convention that they have here in Salt Lake City. Hanging out with my man, Dino Bronson.
Good morning.
And we have the privilege and opportunity to hang out with the executive director of Women's Mining Coalition, Lyndsay Wright.
That's a mouthful, isn't it?
Hey, and thanks for letting us corner you yesterday to come on.
Y'all cornered me and then I talked your ears off.
Yeah, it's all right. Well, she was going to have a boring podcast. I'm like, there is no way this is going to happen.
Well, thank you for the conversations because they were understanding what you guys are doing. So hopefully we can light up or shine a little light on what you guys have going and what that looks like. But before we get there, let's talk about Little Lyndsay. Where'd you start out? Where were you born, raised?
Little Lyndsay. Oh, gosh. So I'm originally from a place called Sugar Land, Texas. It's a suburb of Houston.
Oh, there's a band out there, Sugar Land. Come on.
Yeah.
Everybody knows Sugar Land, Texas.
But I grew up in Sugar Land, a suburb. It was rural when I was born. Houston obviously expanded so quickly back in the 80s and 90s that it is now part of, if you ask someone if they're from Houston, they'll say I'm from Houston and you just say, well, what suburb? Like, where are you really from? No one's really from Houston. Everyone's from either Katy or the Woodlands or Sugar Land.
What did mom and dad do when you were little?
My mom was a KT. She worked for a kinesiotherapist for the VA hospital. So she worked for the VA in Houston from the age of 23 until she retired 35 years later. What's that math? 58. She retired in her late 50s and she's been retired for about 10 years now. Lives in north of Conroe, if you're familiar with Houston. Conroe is a lake area north of the city. And so her and her husband actually are retired and live out there. I go home and visit to Texas and I mean, what a life to live, right?
Yeah.
If you were to guess, what kept her around the job at the same company for 35 years?
Honestly, I feel like that's a generational thing sometimes. Like I think, because my father worked in oil and gas and he worked for Tenneco for I don't know how many years. And then he went and worked for Unocal. They're based out of the Western. And then he lived overseas, worked in Indonesia for about 4 years when I was in high school. And then when he came back, the pipeline project that he was working on, the LNG project he was working on, got bought out by Chevron. And so he was absorbed into the company. So he worked there for 20 more years until he retired. And so, both of them were like that. And it's so interesting now because I've worked at 5 companies.
And you're only 26.
And I'm only, yeah. I'm not 40 yet. I have a couple months, but you know what I mean? I think and the longest tenure I had at one company was 5 years. I really do think that and I will say this, that may not be a norm. And because I am such a person who has as you'll learn this morning, as you learned yesterday, I have so many different interests and I love learning the big picture of things. So I started out obviously in accounting and now I work in sort of political advocacy, if you will. And I'm like, how did the bridge to get there is very interesting.
I think we're all on the spectrum.
Yeah.
Well, I was also going to say, I think that's the generation that's coming up. It's more, you don't have a job and you're in that job for 30 years. You have multiple careers and multiple things. So I think it's
generationally here in the U.S. I mean, I went back to Japan a couple times this year and our tour guide basically told us that's his job for the rest of his life. Because if you were to move jobs more than once, they think that you're unstable and you won't get hired.
Super
I
interesting.
mean, there might be I'm just kidding. But well, also too, I'm not married. I don't have children. So for me, it's very, there's reasons why people make the decisions they make. And I have full respect for everybody for doing that. And for me, I just have such interest in doing and learning new things that hell, maybe I won't even be doing what I'm doing now in, 10 years. And, I always laugh when, excuse me, someone will say, well, Lyndsay, what's your 5-year plan? I'm like, oh, that's a horrible question to ask me. You know what I mean? Because 5 years ago, I would never have told you. 10 years ago, no clue. I would be living in Reno, Nevada, right?
Yeah.
Working in the mining industry. I didn't even know about the mining industry until about 15 years later. It was because I had a mentor who came into it. Sure. But I really didn't know much about it. And so in the last decade is really where I have come in and I thought I was going to leave after the first 2 years because, and I tell people this, that, I left Texas in 2019, went to Denver to work for an old boss of mine, mentor, who worked in commercial real estate and land development with me. And she worked in the mining industry, but she knew that I had interest in getting out of Texas, essentially. I wanted to see what was out there. And working in accounting and finance, it's very, that skill set is very transferable into different industries, right?
100%.
Like you can do accounting and finance in any industry, right?
Yeah, everybody's got to make money.
And so for me, working in, now I came out of school in 2008 into real estate, which if you know that time, worst,
Yeah, you picked a great time to do real estate.
I picked a great time now. My background's in finance, and I just sort of fell into, the accounting piece of it. My background is actually in finance. And so.
Is it finance or finance?
Well,
hey, dude, if you're educated, like probably finance.
Well, listen, I've been saying it wrong my whole life.
Can I tell you this? I had why I say it that way? And I don't even know if it's, I don't actually really know, but I was so traumatized by somebody who corrected me one time.
Ooh.
It was during an interview and I said, and I was like 25 years old. I was very young. And I was in an interview and he said, you keep saying finance, that's incorrect. And I was like, oh, I'm definitely not working here. Like,
yeah.
I won't tell the company, but.
Excuse me, Mr. Poopy Pants.
Yeah. I was like, there's a real quick way to get people not to work for you.
Yeah.
But.
Explain to me how your culture is very good here.
Yeah. And I will, it's a very big, well-known company too, back in Houston.
What does it rhyme with?
So step back just a second. Cause I want to know, growing up, did you play any sports? Were you in band? What was that like for you?
So I grew up, I played softball and volleyball. I think I did soccer at one point. That probably lasted about, I'm not a big runner if you can't tell.
I'm with you. Like that's
who's trying to be the best at running?
Not my jam. But no, I played softball when I was younger. And then when I got into about middle school, you sort of had to pick an avenue of which sport you liked. And I played volleyball. So I played volleyball from the 7th grade until my senior year. I played competitively in club outside of, high school volleyball. And then I got a couple of offers from some universities, smaller universities around Texas and in sort of like the Southeast region, but I lost interest in it into my senior year. It's really interesting when I think back on it that, I was if you can believe this, I was kind of a quiet and shy kid. Weirdly, I think I was just, sort of maybe like plagued with insecurity and things like that. And so I just didn't have, a good feel for who I was and wasn't comfortable in things. And I've definitely grown out of that. And, I think that comes from just friendships I've made over the years. I have some incredible friends that I've had since I was 10, 15 years old, years old. And so I think over time, and then when I went into college, so I went to Texas State, which is, I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, but it's in a place called San Marcos, Texas. It's about 20 miles south of Austin. It's right in the middle. It's on the 35 corridor between Austin and San Antonio. If you were in San Antonio last year for WIM, it's right north of San Antonio. Okay. And so it's this little small college town, a very, very stereotypical college town, if you will. And the claim to fame used to be that we were the #1 drinking school in the country. Oh, yeah. So they literally changed the name of the school so that people would not, that was one of the main reasons they did it. It was a rebranding, but we all knew the real
What did you go to study?
Honestly, when I got into school, I was undeclared. I didn't know. And I'll be honest, my parents, my father, he's a very conservative type of guy. And, my sophomore year, end of my sophomore year rolled around. He's like, hey, that undeclared thing doesn't work anymore. Like you've done your, you have to do like the general classes and whatnot. And so he's like, that doesn't work anymore. Just go into business. And I was like, okay, fine. Like, and how I correlated was I liked math and I always excelled at math. I was horrible at English. I can't write for crap. Sorry.
Yeah, we don't even know what finance is.
It's finance.
Thank God for AI, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, I'm with you.
But and accounting and math came easy to me. And so that's sort of the route I took. And there was one of the courses I took over a summer school class I took, it was a real estate course and you could take it as an elective. And I took that between my sophomore and junior year. And that is sort of what set me on this sort of real estate land development kind of avenue. And so when I got out of school, I was looking for, real estate type of roles. And then when I graduated middle of 2008, right during the real estate depression. And then I went to go work for a architecture firm. There, I was the accounting assistant and the accounting assistant for this really small firm. I remember I sat in this like bitty corner and they had this huge wall that kind of like overtook me. It was the weirdest setup. They finally knocked down the wall and I had like a desk. But I worked there and then I was only there for 6 months and I got laid off because of everything going on. And I remember thinking, oh man, and I was living in Austin at the time. And my parents were like, look, we were sort of bankrolling your life through college and there was an agreement there, but we don't do that anymore. That's not, and so I was very lucky in that.
Broke the dinner plate.
I was very lucky in that. And I'm so grateful. Right. Yeah. So I moved to Austin. I wanted to be near my friends who were some of them were still in college. And so I was like,
let's be honest, Austin's a party town.
Yeah, it's a fun, there's a I always tell people it's a college town. My little sister went to UT. And so I love going back and visit. My family has a house on Lake Travis there. And so
keep it weird.
Yeah. It's a really interesting place. And so I lived there for another 2 years. But after I left the architecture firm, I was like, oh no, I'm not going to find a job. This is when you could find jobs on Craigslist. Do you remember that? Where it was pre-LinkedIn.
You could find dates on Craigslist too.
There wasn't anything you couldn't find.
Yeah. It's so funny that I just remember that because this was when I went into my freshman year of college, that was when Facebook started, right? And so, and at that point you had to have a EDU email just to be able to get accepted to be on it. And so
MySpace was still a real thing.
Yes. This is only like 5 years later. So LinkedIn definitely didn't even exist. And so I got onto Craigslist and I found this, it was a home building company in Austin. It's called Buffington. I think it's called over the years, Buffington Home Building Group, Buffington Capital Holdings, great real estate company. And the CEO of the company, his name is Tom Buffington. He's passed away. This was obviously about almost 20 years ago. But fun fact is his son-in-law is Dennis Quaid. And so whenever I was working there, I didn't really know that fact. I was too junior in the company. I was very new. But one day it was like a Friday afternoon and I was working. And so the general counsel of the company, his name is Blake. And he was a super cool guy. He was a lawyer. His father was the owner, Tom. Blake was in the office and I used to do his billing, the accounting. So, cause I was the accounting assistant and AP. And so I did all of his billing and cause he didn't have one of those in house. And he taught me how to do legal billing and invoicing and stuff. And one day, and all of a sudden, Dennis Quaid just like pops out next to my desk, and I just kind of looked over, and I didn't. It was weird, right? And I just kind of went about my business, and then all of a sudden,
kind of like the butler off of Billy Madison, or something. That's what I'm.
And then Blake walks out of his office. He's like, "Oh, Lyndsay, have you met Dennis before?" I was like, sure, no, never met Dennis before.
Old pals.
But yeah, and it was just kind of a really interesting interaction. I mean, I don't remember a lot about the company except for sort of the people there, which, we talk about this podcast being about people. And that's what, I've sort of been lucked out in the companies I've worked for that I've worked with a lot of, good people. So, but yeah, and that's where I met my mentor, Jenny. So Jenny is, she's based on Reno, but she was the controller for the company for Buffington, and she then left to move back to the Western states. So she's originally from Northern California and like the Russian River Russian River Valley.
Yeah.
And her husband's family is from Fernley. And so they moved back to Reno for multiple reasons. And so, but for the next decade, she and I just kept in touch. And she was my first boss that I truly loved working for. And she always, I think she recognized I was young. And so she had a lot of grace for me. I think she's a very graceful person in general, but she had a lot of grace for me because when I look back at it, I'm like, oh my God, how'd you deal with that? Like,
She's probably seen your energy levels and went, I can get this girl to do some work.
Yeah. And that's the thing. I will say that I've always been someone who will work. Like I make a joke with my dad. I'm like, if anything, your kids have a work ethic. I mean, all of us do. Right. And
what do you attribute that to?
I don't know, honestly. I don't know. I think well, I will say this. I get bored easily sometimes, which is so weird that I spent almost more than 15 years in accounting. And because that's just the most repetitive job you can have.
Yeah, but you can manipulate numbers to make it say whatever you want. So that's probably the fun game.
There's also tracking and trending and seeing where improvements are, leading and lagging indicators. So it can be fun.
I like to tell people I'm an analyst because now that I've gotten sort of out of that finance and accounting world, I love to analyze people, right? And it has very much come in handy for me when you're doing something. We'll get into this, I'm sure, later, but talking about like the Women's Mining Coalition fly-in, right? It's a puzzle. You're putting together a puzzle when you're planning these events, doing all this. And so it's also about knowing the people that are involved with it and sort of set them up for success. You have to know who they are and then put them in the right place. Sure. Right. And so that's sort of something I learned through my analytical, works. I kind of attribute it to that, but
very cool.
But yeah, no. And to answer your question earlier, I have 3 siblings. I have an older sister, a younger brother, and a younger sister.
Okay. Yeah. So you're right in the middle.
Yeah, I'm the middle daughter.
Okay.
And I like to tell people. So I say this, that my little brother and sister. My little brother's 10 years younger than me. My little sister is 12 years younger than me, and we have different mothers. But I usually don't tell people that.
Yeah.
They are my family.
Yeah.
I love my siblings, and I make a joke that my older sister is my mom's favorite. My little sister is my dad's favorite. My brother is my stepmom's favorite, but I'm the siblings' favorite because I get along.
Hey,
like I'm the one that
you're the glue.
I'm that guy.
They call me for everything. I'm like, oh God, what problem? My brother, my little brother, he cracks me up. The phone calls I've received over the last, when he was in college, I won't even tell the stories, but I'm like, I'm your sister, remember? Like, these are not conversations I want to be having with you. But to this day, he just turned 30 a couple of weeks ago. And to this day, he's just I adore him. He went to OU. He studied energy management. He's working for a startup company, which is really fun. Yeah. He left sort of the corporate 9 to 5 and trying to give it a shot. And it's it's challenging, right? When you grow up in a bubble that I call Texas and Houston and where we grew up, struggling is a new thing, I think, for him a little bit. And it's nice to see that he's really taking it and just like, oh shit. Like, he's like, I think I'm gonna live in a trailer. And I'm like, cool. Like, great.
I want to dive into that a little bit.
Sponsoring this episode of the podcast, JSR Fleet Performance, supporting the people who keep mining moving. If you're a part of a training group or managing equipment operator development, it's not just about running gear, it's about running it right. JSR Fleet Performance works alongside training teams to extend the life of your fleet, reduce costly breakdowns, and make sure your operators understand how to get the most out of every machine. With customized training support, maintenance insights, and real-world in-field education, JSR helps surface operations boost reliability, safety, and productivity from the pit to the shop. So whether you're building the next generation of mining professionals, looking to audit what you currently have going on, or looking to help develop your workforce, brass in at Mining Minds LLC and bring JSR Fleet Performance into your corner.
You see more of the younger generation nowadays doing things like that, taking the risk to go to a startup company or to something that they can develop rather than go into the traditional companies that you could be there for 35 years. It's like they don't want that. Why do you think that is?
Well, I think for me, like I mentioned, for me, it's that I get bored easily because I'm not married. I don't have children. And to each their own and everything, but I love to learn new things. I like to read about, I can go down a rabbit hole so quickly on a topic that you're like, why? And that's just who I am kind of as a person. And so when I'm sitting at a desk all day from 9 to 5 and I'm doing a job, and then eventually I'm like, okay, what's next? What's the next thing I can learn?
Yeah, you got in trouble a lot when you were in school, didn't you?
No, not really. No, I was actually
Moving around. You're like,
no.
Can you sit down, please?
Shockingly, no. I was actually a pretty good student. I was one of those who, graduated top, 15% or whatever.
Oh yeah. Good
No,
for you.
No, I was considered a nerd by some of my friends, but I definitely was
Only
not.
because you helped them with their homework problem.
That's probably true. But no, I don't know. I think also too, it's each person, to each is their own, right?
Yeah.
Every person has a different story. And I do think it's a generational thing. I just think that also with innovation and technology, you have to remember that our lives, I think, move so much faster now than it did 30 years ago, right?
We've also been constantly learning through growing up. We're learning phones, we're learning computers,
access to
we're learning.
information.
Yeah.
Is that a good thing in your opinion?
Oh gosh. Access to, well, yes, I think it's a great thing. And I don't know that I wouldn't want to have grown up 100 years ago, let's be honest, right? And I think though sometimes when you take a step back and you look at the world, you say, how's that being used, right? You want to be on the side of good as opposed to the side of bad with it, right? And so you can have those kind of conversations, I think, of is it good, is it bad? And so I think I would say it's a good thing, but at the same time, I think that sometimes I'm like, man, can we go back to the early 90s? I remember when I was one of those kids that played outside, right? Yeah. And now I'm stuck at a computer all day.
Yeah, that's kind of where I was going with it. Like, I think generations value different things. And if it's put in front of you, technology is valued right now. But back in the day, it was family. It was, being together. And we went away from that.
I think net positive, probably it's a good thing. Because
is that an accounting reference?
Yeah, no,
I love that.
Finance.
Finance, sorry.
Come on, guys.
But I guess to your point, Dino, that's where I think we start seeing some of these. I know my family, right? We're working to get back to sitting at the dinner table and doing the traditional things, even though we have the technology. So I think it's a balancing act for sure. And like you said, to each their own, but I think there's pros and cons to all of that. Mm-hmm. So continue to walk us through this a little bit. You have your mentor, Jenny.
Oh yeah. So I was working in Austin, and then about 2 years in, my parents were like, okay, the $15 an hour gig is not going to happen anymore. And so I moved back to Houston, and I at that point, I was really starting to learn who the real estate companies were. And the bigger ones. And at the time, I found out about this company called Hines, not ketchup, but Hines, Hines. And they are the largest real estate company in the world. They're operator, investor, developer. And for me, I wanted to go be a part of building I wanted to build big buildings, right? I come from a city, right? I'm from Houston. I've watched big buildings be built. And so, it was so funny. I remember when I left the home building company in Austin, I was talking to one of the guys, and he was like, well, what are you doing? I said, well, I'm going to go back home to Houston. And I said, I think I'm going to try and apply for this company called Hines. And he was like, he kind of laughed at me, and I go, what? Because I was very naive. He said, that's a really hard company to get into. And I said, oh, really? Because at the time I was like, well, I just had an interview with them. So, and it seemed to go well because I have a second one, but I didn't tell him that.
Yeah.
Right. And he said, yeah, he's like, they only hire people from like really good schools. I was like, are you trying to say something about Texas State? What are you trying to say here? Anyway, and I will say this, knowing what I know now, because I did get hired at Hines. I went and worked there for 5 years. That was probably one of the best jobs I could have had coming out of school. I think I was making like $50,000 a year. I was, 23 years old, and at that time was good money for someone like me. And
what kind of car were you driving
back then? A Jetta.
Dude.
Like a 98 Jetta. Like it was, no, this thing was falling apart. Don't worry. It's not like everyone was like, oh, it's so pretty. I'm like, wait till you get in it. Like I remember the sunroof. We had a joke with all my friends. The sunroof would like randomly open. So we thought that like a ghost was like had haunted my car. And we would be on road trips and all of a sudden my sunroof would just open by itself and then it would not shut. And it was just one of these just things.
It was an indicator for one of your friends to hop out the top.
Well, it happened so often that my friends and I knew how to fix it. Does that make sense? Right?
Yeah.
We're like, oh no, we just slide it and move it. Anyway, we still laugh about it to this day. I mentioned I have my friends, my closest friends that I have are ones I've had for decades at this
Very
point.
cool.
And I see them still when I go back home and I talk to them all the time. But anyway, so I went to go work for Heinz, was there for 5 years. I was a project accountant for them. And while I was there, what I also tell to people, especially young kids, it's kind of my advice. I don't know if smaller companies really enjoy this, but I always tell them, go cut your teeth at a big company. Go get that base knowledge because it's going to teach you what a corporate company is like. It's going to teach you sort of that internal politics, if you will. It's also gonna refine you a little bit. That's what I needed, I think, as someone like me. And so I am so grateful for that company and that job that I have because it sort of set me on a path. And I will say this, it is a really hard company to get hired at. I have no idea how I got hired there. I remember I did so many interviews. And then when I left, though, it was very easy to find a position because people wanted people from this company because you're trained so well.
So you said refined, and so I think you took a lot of value out of knowing that you were getting refined at this place. What's the positives from your opinion in a corporate setting being refined, or an entrepreneur that's $100 million a year guy that might not have that corporate refinement?
Again, I think it goes back to each is their own. For me, I'm more successful when I have a set, like if you give me a schedule, like I love a good agenda. Like I love a conference where you tell me where I need
You're like 30 seconds late.
Exactly. If I have to wander and figure things out, I stand in hallways and just talk to people, right?
That's why you got so many friends.
Yeah. But I think for me personally, I was sort of at that age also too. I mean, I was 25 at this time. You're kind of lost, right? You don't, like, I'm 25. I was not a 25-year-old who knew what I wanted in life.
But you were putting pieces of the puzzle together.
Yeah.
Right?
And I think that company was good for me at that time and for the next 5 years. And then when I turned 30, that's when I was like, okay, this is where the phase of I get bored easily started, because now it was just like my accounting and finance was just clockwork, right? And I was so, okay, I can't do this anymore. I can't do another year end. I can't, working in public accounting, like not happening. And so, but I will say this, through that is where I got a lot of international experience. So I used to work on some global funds and I got to work with different countries and different people. And I really enjoyed that piece of it. And so that's one thing about the mind that comes back when choosing to come into the mining industry, that sort of played a part in all of that, was that experience that I got for about the back half of my time at Heinz. And then when I turned 30, I was like, okay, I want to go do this entrepreneurial thing. And I say entrepreneurial thing. I got contacted. I don't remember the story of how I got connected with these guys, but it was these two guys from Houston. They were 33. I was 30. And they were like, we're starting a real estate development company. And I interviewed with him. And I remember the managing director, the founder, I was had an interview with him and he just kind of looked at me. He's like, I think I'm concerned that you're too structured. And I was like, well, that's the complaint now.
Yeah.
But I remember this because he used to tell me all the time, he's like, we're not structured, right? I mean, I think the fourth or fifth employee that they have grown in the last decade. They have like 60 something employees. They're a huge company down in Houston, very successful. But for that 3 years, I worked from 9 a.m. until 1 a.m. every day. I loved it though.
You were engaged.
I was so engaged because I was learning so much.
Did you become unrefined?
A little bit. Very much.
Well, I think as you're going through your story, obviously you're building yourself and building your character, but you're starting to understand that there's a balance.
So at the time, the company was a subsidiary of a corporation, and the owner of my subsidiary, his family owned this company. And so, but I only worked for it. but the CFO from there was a sort of a shared services of accounting, finance, IT, HR. I was sort of on the ether. And we were sort of looked at as like the ragtag team of, that real estate crew, because this is all oil and gas, engineering, EPCM related.
Big time money.
Yeah. And so we're over here like, just what are those guys doing? Right. But we were sort of running at full speed with I actually just watched a podcast not too long ago of the managing director do kind of a sit down podcast, or he did a sit down podcast like this. And to hear him talk about like the story of that company is really interesting, because those first couple of years were it was wild. It was
like the wolf from Wall Street or whatever.
You felt like you were accomplishing so much, but it was also so unorganized, because we weren't building a company. We were just closing a shit ton of deals, working all the time. And it was like this chase, right? And so these are guys that are originators. They're transactional guys, right? They just they're about the deal, if that makes sense.
So how much more money were you making?
Not
you
a lot.
From 50 grand to what?
To like 75. Like it was not a big jump, because for me, I had said to them, like, this is startup, I understand. Now I will say this, they bonused me out on deals a lot, because they figured out very quickly that I want to learn more. Also, I figured out very quickly that they're closing all these deals and then just shoving all the information to me. And I'm the only accounting person, only finance, only IT system. Like I was doing all of those things
that
because
structure paid dividends for them.
God, exactly. And so they were, but the one thing about it was that I sort of pushed myself into their world and said, you have got to take me along, or like I will fail and you will fail, essentially. Right. And so, but they were very gracious in it. And so they were like, okay, you want to come and be on deals with us? I got to work with title companies. And it's before I left, I was the one, sort of handling and managing all the land transactions. Like I was the one helping to close the deals and getting it, essentially absorbing that work into the company and, putting together the balance sheets and whatever, and all those details. But we had sort of got this system down. We still hadn't scaled as far as, headcount went, which was really tough on me. That's where a lot of the hours came in. But I remember talking to the CFO for the bigger company, and he said to me, Lyndsay, he goes, this is going to be your favorite and least favorite job you're ever going to have. And I always think back on it, and he is so right. Like the things I learned at that job, and I was only there for a little under 3 years, and because I hit a wall. I hit burnout so much, but I felt like I had been there for 5 or 6 because I worked just so much, but I loved it. Like I loved learning, and I loved everything I was doing.
What the younger generation probably needs to realize is during that 3 years, you've probably got 6 years of experience in that time, because you put in the time, the energy, and effort. And I'm not saying go out there and do it if you don't want to do it, but I am saying like there are benefits. Because I get it. Once you're kind of in that zone and you're so engaged, it's like, I'm learning this, I'm doing that. Like there is value in that, and you learn so much in that process. I think it's for a short amount of time.
I think it opens up your mind to be more creative again, because we talked about refinement and being in that corporate structure and working within these walls. Now you've got an opportunity to see what creative looks like, and you stayed there for 3 years, felt like you were there for 7, but now you've developed yourself enough to where I'm interested to hear where you went after that.
So that is when I was working there, and I had just kind of hit a wall. I was so exhausted, and I physically and mentally was not doing well, because I had, to my own, that was my own self-inflicted, if you will. And so I had called Jenny, my old mentor, and I said, I'm struggling. Like, I don't know if I want to stay here. Like, I don't know if I can continue to do this. Like, if it doesn't, I'm struggling. Right. And I was also having these conversations internally. And I think there were, and not to go into too much detail, but I needed to leave that company. Right. I also think that me leaving that company actually helped that company and myself. Right. I'm so glad I left, and I'm sure they're glad I left too, even though at the time I was so scared to do it, and I was very upset to do it. And I think they were upset that I did it, but I don't think that it turned out bad for either one of us. Because I think I was a crutch for them. Does it make sense? Like I would take on and take on and take on, and they were so used to that they would just let me, and it didn't force them to actually build a scalable business. I'm not taking credit for any of this by any means. I'm just saying
sense.
To look back and, hindsight's 20/20, right? And so to think of where they are now and to see how much growth they had after I left, I was like, oh yeah, I was probably part of the problem, if anything, right? So
I think maybe after you left, they realized that the structure was going to be important, and they had an opportunity to restructure, including your position. And
Oh yeah, they hired. It took them. The woman who started after me, because I was friends with the senior accountant that I had hired that came onto the team, and she called me. She goes, "The girl who replaced you left because she was too scared of the job." And I was like, yeah, they sit there. They got to lower the bar a little bit of what their expectations are, because like you can't force people to do that much work and to absorb that. And then the woman that they hired after that, they let her go because she wasn't doing enough. And so they finally, I think, settled it. That person I think is still there. And so it took a couple of people for them to get somebody to, which that doesn't make me feel great, but I think it highlights a problem, right?
Well,
you can't run a successful business.
You hit on an important topic, burnout and mental health. That happens, more than not, that people don't, they don't recognize it early enough, and they don't really talk about it, right? So once you recognized it, how did you get through that?
I'm gonna make a joke. Medication. But I think it's always been sort of like that taboo topic, right? I mean, I think everyone, whether it's a seasonal depression or situational, right? Yeah. Something like we're only human. We can only handle so much, and I think this comes back to that conversation about, right, access to information. We are so. We know so much about the world, and there's so much bad in the world that I think for me, I'm like, oh my God, I can't. But I think when it comes, I think understanding at least that people probably are going, you never know what someone's going through. And I think a lot of people have grace for people, right? I have been so lucky to have from people like Jenny who have had grace for me in the times where I'm like, oh, what an annoying pain in the ass. Right?
Sponsoring this episode of the podcast, our good friend Jimmy Ewing and Motor Mission Machine and Radiator. When your machine overheats, there's no downtime to waste, especially in mining. That's why Mining Minds recommends Motor Mission Machine and Radiator, your go-to experts in industrial and heavy equipment radiator repair, engine and cylinder head rebuilding, and precision machine shop work. Founded in 1949 and serving the Western United States for over 50 years, Motor Mission handles it all. Radiators and coolers from passenger vehicles to massive mining shovels, and full machine shop services like honing, line boring, and crankshaft balancing. They'll pick it up, tear it down, clean it right, and test it on custom stands before it leaves their shop. The bottom line is, when you talk in best in class, that's Motor Mission Machine and Radiator. Big or small, they can do them all.
It almost sounds like Jenny she understood you genuinely as a person, to where when you were working at these companies, you were putting on this avatar to go to work, and it was like that avatar got tired, and you could always just be yourself in front of Jenny.
Yeah, and to be honest, that's kind of how I've always managed too. Like, I think being as authentic, I think that's a weird thing for a newer generation. I sort of want to, we talk about workforce development and hiring people and what will keep you at a company and things like that. People are not the same. And when you try and put them in that box, it's really hard to keep them there. Now, some people are really good at that, right? I have not been anymore. I'm not anymore, if you will. And I also try not to lead like that either, right? I have been so lucky to, I had a conversation at one of the companies I worked with. I hired these two women, and very, very different, right? In very different points in their lives. And I remember one of them saying, you treat me different. And I said, well, wait a second. I said, I treat you different, but not in a bad way, right? Sure. I see your life in this way and that person's life in this way. And I cannot manage you the same, because you have different needs in your lives and your careers. You do different positions. I go, if you feel that I'm, more giving them more benefits, let's talk about it, because I want different. Exactly. I said, if you think that's the case, then let's talk about it, because I don't want you to feel that. Yeah. I was like, and what can I do? You need more Fridays off? Let's do it. Like, I'm all for it. Right. And so I really tried to manage the people I worked with, like that, because it was done to me. It was done to me. Right. And I will say this, I learned very quickly who I can't work for, right? Who you interview with and you don't know those true people, right? Yeah. It takes time to learn who they are. And for me, I am not somebody who, because I don't feel like I treat people that way, that I very quickly will, we're not on the same page. Yeah.
Well, you got two fake people coming together trying to get an interaction or a transaction done, right? And neither one of you know the real person, to where authenticity on both sides. I mean, that's going to help people stay where they want to be for longer.
I think you mentioned it, the new generation. There's a lot of fake in the new generation, not the kids necessarily, but I mean, AI is a great example. Like what's real, what's not.
Social media is a great example.
Yeah, but authenticity, to your point, being genuine, those are things that you can feel those. It's weird, but
the
feel
energy.
them.
It helps you to build you build trust off of that.
100%.
That's how you build trust. If I don't
relationships.
If I feel like you're lying to me, as even just on something simple, we've already started off.
Yeah.
But what if you're just thinking they're lying and they're really not? Are you?
Honestly, I feel like I'm a pretty good judge of character, and
Intuition's a real thing.
Intuition's a real. Yeah. It is a real thing, and I mean, I don't know if you can tell, but I'll pretty much talk to a wall, and so. I also can pick up if I'm annoying somebody pretty quickly, and I'm like, okay, I'm probably annoying them. Let's just back out of this conversation very quickly. But no, I know. I think we got off on.
So where'd you go after that?
I went to, so that's when Jenny called me and said, hey, I know you have interest in moving out of Texas. Like, would you want to come backfill my role? And I said, okay, where am I going? What's the company? I said yes before I even knew these things. Right. And it was just because it was her. And she said, I work, and I knew she was working in the mining industry at the time. That's how I learned about the mining industry, was knowing that she was in it. But again, I knew nothing about it, right? I coming from Houston, you live in oil and gas. That is the oil and gas, Mecca. And so I didn't really know anything about the mining industry. I said, you know what? Well, it's accounting. I can't fail at that. I think I'm pretty good at that, right? And so I sort of took a lateral move where I said, I need a 9-to-5. I can no longer do this, startup, fast-paced thing. I just need something to whatever. And so she said, look, and at the time, I didn't know this about the mining industry, but I think there's obviously a lot of turnover. And right, I find out this later when we talk about workforce and yada yada. And so they're like, we'll move you out here. Come. And I was a senior accountant. I went out to be a senior accountant, got paid really well for that position, and moved to Denver. I was working for Highcroft at the time. They were coming out of care and maintenance from their bankruptcy. And so that was really nice too, because it's like a kind of like a startup, if you will. Yeah. So I was able to sort of get in and learn very quickly some things that skills that I had not used either in the past or need to be, fine-tuned a little bit. And so I was there for a year, and I had signed an agreement to stay for a year, right? You know how they always have those agreements. You stay for a year, you pay back your relocation fee. And so I found out later that they were all taking bets that I was going to leave after a year, which I didn't. I won. Apparently no one got close because COVID happened. My 1-year anniversary, COVID happened. And I say this, understanding that I wish COVID on nobody and nothing, I've had it multiple times. And, but I say COVID sort of is what kept me in the mining industry, because I was about to leave. I was about to go back into real estate in Denver or try something new, but it hit, and I was like, oh, and the whole world shut down. And so I was like, well, I need a job still. I need to not do this. And so
mining companies are still going to mine. We still need minerals. Exactly.
And so I stayed with it for, I think that was in February, March of 2020. And then in October, the HR director that I used to work with at Highcroft, she had left and was recruiting. And so she called me. She called a couple people that we worked with, and Jenny actually recommended me and said, I'm not interested, but you should call Lyndsay. And so that's how I got attached to the Ioneer project, the Rhyolite Ridge project in Southern Nevada.
That's where we were raised. I'm Beatty.
Beatty. This one's down. Is it Dyer?
Tonopah.
Are you from Tonopah?
No, but it's 45 minutes away. Yeah.
Close?
No, 90 miles.
Nice.
Whatever it is. Yeah.
Nice.
45 minutes though.
Yeah, if you're going 100 miles an hour.
Oh, so you're from Beatty. You're not from Spring Creek?
Yeah. Well, we grew up in Beatty. We were born in Ely. So our parents were miners, so we traveled all around the state.
Are you brothers?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, hello. We had a new flash. He's my cousin. He's my cousin. I'm kidding.
This is why you can't use nicknames. At no point have I'm so sorry.
No.
Don't cut. You can cut that out. Don't cut that out.
No. That's awesome.
But so I interrupted you, but you were in the Ioneer.
So and the thing about it is that I didn't really, again, I had only been working for Highcroft, and that wasn't the most amazing place, if you will, to, really
it's a difficult place.
It's a hard project. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's a hard deposit, right?
A lot of cool things going on right now, but
it's not giving you the best news story of what the mining industry has to offer.
Exactly, for me, right? And so, however, it gave me, I will say this, working in operations for mining gives you a skill set that working for a junior does not, right? It's the same thing. I go back to that Heinz, getting that, start cutting your teeth on operations really does sort of help. And so, but I didn't know anything about the company, but it was kind of, they're like, oh, this is this cool project and all this. And so I really liked what they were doing was they were transferring the finance team so it's an Australian owned company. They're transferring the finance team from Sydney to Reno, and they needed to sort of build up that team. And so they brought me in as the US finance manager. And then there was a Sydney finance manager, the CFO. And I think they had like a business analyst, but they were all kind of leaving, right? The CFO and the CFO.
Yeah, well, there wasn't any business to analyze.
At the time, yeah. And but the CFO and the Sydney finance manager were staying, and then I moved from Denver to Reno. No other reason to come to Reno, if I'm honest.
Yeah, that's a joke.
Moved to Reno and sort of helped them build up that sort of team. My first hire was within like a month, I hired somebody to do AP accounting assistant. And then over the next sort of year, hired a senior accountant, brought on an IT manager, because I was doing all of these things. I'm like, I am.
You need a team.
I'm a mediocre IT manager, if I'm being honest. But
control all.
But again. Yeah, I will say this, but again, we used a contractor too that helped us. So I was more managing people, if anything. I don't like to take any credit for that. The guy who's there now is amazing. I love him. But yeah, so I sort of helped pull that team a little bit together. I then, it's so interesting about the mining industry, again, because an accounting assistant who I hired, literally a year later, she came to me just sort of like devastated. She's like, Lyndsay, and it was purely a money issue. And I said, do not apologize to me. I'm not somebody who is going to be devastated if someone makes a decision for them to leave. And so she was very nervous to tell me because she and I had a bond. Like she felt like, she was my friend that I worked with, right? Yep. And so, but for her, she needed to leave, and she was actually going to work for an old boss. Everyone knows everyone in the industry. Oh, yeah. And I was like, oh, this person, because I knew who he was. And so I was like, oh, you're taking my person. And, but then I brought on another woman, and she's awesome. And I'm actually going to have lunch with her when I get back to Reno. I stay in touch with them every once in a while, have lunch, and we're all in Reno anyway. So,
did you ever get a chance to go out to the site?
Oh yeah. No, so it's just a piece of land right now. But I went down to Dyer right in that first kind of like 6 months to a year. My CFO used to always be like, "Why are you going to site? You're like, that's not your job." And I'm like, "Who? You don't have anyone else. Like you have to go to I was like, well, there's no people to go to community events. We hadn't hired those people yet, and so until they brought on more operators and people who were going to be working in the community, then I stopped going or whatever. But I was just trying to be helpful at that point. Yeah,
right? But to even understand what the guys in the community are dealing with, and there's finances that flow through all of that. But to be a part of it all, to understand it, and to see what the mining industry community looks like is super important.
Oh yeah. Well, and for me too, it was again about learning, right? I knew I had gone out for the Highcroft mine, right? I would come in quarterly every other month, and I would fly into Reno, drive, and usually I would fly into Reno and then drive straight to the site, and then go into Winnemucca, stay at the Best Western all week, go to work on Thursday morning out at site, drive back to Reno, fly out first thing Friday morning. There was no that's a really interesting site too. If you ever, I got a great experience too. I mean, I got to ride in a haul truck when I was out.
Yeah. That's what I was going to say. So
could you do that 12 hours a day?
Hell no. Oh man. It's crazy because, I don't know. I can make a joke that I'm accident prone. I wouldn't trust me driving a haul truck. Let's be honest.
You're in favor of autonomy from the finance side.
Yes.
Well, what I told Dino, or what you said, Dino, is such a profound statement too, is having boots on the ground, or you from the finance side, you get to look at numbers all day long. Mm-hmm. But when you can associate that with what's going on at the face, to me, there's a happy medium there that actually helps you do your job at times.
Tells a story.
I can think of a couple of finance people that I worked with that said, hey, take me out. I want to understand this. Mm-hmm. And because of that, they got a better end result. They're not just looking at numbers. They're actually looking at the qualitative and quantitative information.
Well, at the end of the day, honestly, man, in my opinion, I think we're, when you're able to do something like that, you're able to quantify the human element inside of what we're doing, and it's not just numbers, and it's not just we're making the best financial decision because this is what we have to do as a company. It's, hey, no, we're taking our people and the people of the community involved in the decision.
And on top of that, you went to 2 unique projects in Nevada. Like Ioneer's they're both cool projects, but they're very unique compared to the norm in Nevada is what I should say.
I will tell you this too. The reason I chose to go to them is purely because of the people. Had
That
nothing.
makes sense, yeah.
I mean, again, I come from a energy expansion sort of world, and so I didn't really understand lithium at the time.
Yeah.
I thought, oh, cool. Like this is a really. Now I will tell you this: the chairman of when you Google the company, essentially, at that time, the chairman of the board is from Houston. So like the guys I used to work with at the company before, they all are from that same community of essentially very wealthy people.
Sure. So we're going to put this out there to the oil and gas industry and mining industry. Who pays better? Let's start this battle.
Depends on what position, I think.
No, that's fair.
You know what I mean?
We're gonna.
If you were to go back in the same position.
I would love to be a metallurgist right now if I'm
Yeah.
I would be, and if I was a metallurgist, I would make sure that you very much know how much of a hot commodity, no pun intended, you are. So,
Yeah. Okay. So mining does well.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
And really, so that's part of our discussion today.
Pays well than pays better than real estate, if I'm honest.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the industry pays well. We don't retain a lot of people. What's your opinion on that?
I think, well, again, for operations, I think that purely is because it's a tough job. Like it's a tough environment to work in. I also think it's the company. We talk about capacity a lot, and I don't know. And I also think every project is different. Every project is different, right? You can have incredible people and you could have a deposit that just is not panning out, right? You could have a
it dictates how many people are working at your facility. If that minerals go, up and down, it's super volatile.
Yes, exactly. So I think for oil and gas, they definitely have it easier because
consistency.
Well, because if it affects one company in the industry, it's affecting all of them, right? So when you have mass layoffs or the oil market kind of goes down or whatever, it's happening for all companies.
Yeah.
With mining, it depends on the commodity, right?
Sure.
So the lithium sector is, had a great 2020, 2021, and then it went,
everybody's going to build batteries like nobody's business.
Exactly. And then, let's, be kind of, frank about it, like poor Ioneer, right?
Yeah.
Like they're dealing with a share price that has, I think when I was there, it was up to like, 60 cents. This is Australian, and then I don't know what it was the last time I checked. Now things have changed, especially under this administration. I think things are, but I will say this too. They were doing great under the last one as well, right? And they got their permit, they got their loan and doing great. And it's just that sometimes the market for lithium can just. Whew.
Oh yeah, well, and it's gold right now. We've been lucky, but there's been some lulls there. It's cyclical in a lot of things, but copper's another one, and so you're starting to see this ebb and flow. And right now we're in a pretty good spot, but it hasn't always been like that.
I would say we've only got a couple years left until the next administration comes in, and in those big years, things change a lot.
Yeah, a lot of permitting right now, a lot of people trying to push things through. But so continue to walk us through. I know we got a presentation to go to.
Oh, you're fine.
Okay, good.
Yeah. And so I went to go work for the Ioneer project. And the reason why I went there is because there were 2 people that I could Google and essentially find out kind of who they are and what the company was about.
Stalking?
Yeah, exactly.
Nice.
I'm like, I'm not going to work for a company where I think the people are crap. There's 2 people, James Calloway and Bernard Rowe. And I watched their interview. Like I say, watch their interviews, watch their presentations online and things like that. I had never met them, right? During my interview process, I met the people I was working for, right? And I liked them. They were, great. And, plus they were in Sydney. So I always tell people I didn't actually meet my boss in person for a year because people could not get out of Australia because of COVID, right? So we worked together through Teams. Yeah. And I remember telling him, being like, I think you're going to hate me when you actually meet me in person because we don't talk all day long. we're literally 15 hours difference in time. Like so I think that's a benefit for our relationship. Yeah. But no, I actually really enjoyed working with him. I used to tell him, I'm like, you're my second favorite person I've worked for, obviously minus behind Jenny. And so I really appreciate him because he was very much a process guy. And, he comes from oil and gas and very structured, right?
Yeah.
And accountant, he's CFO, but he always allowed me to speak candidly behind closed doors sometimes, but he always allowed me that kind of environment, right? And so that helped build trust. He didn't like what I had to say some of the times.
But how did it make you feel being able to do that with your?
I was always I told him, I was very vocal about my appreciation for it. And I would tell him. And then I think it also maybe changed him a little bit because he became used to that, to where he became more comfortable saying things more directly to me, because I appreciated that directness. Working for Australians, they're very blunt, but I think, and he used to always say to me, Lyndsay, is this an American thing? Because he had never worked for a lot of American companies. And I was like, yes, I was, and so.
And there's a mining thing.
And it's a mining, yeah.
Very direct.
Yeah. And so, well, he's very direct too, but we got on really well. So I will say this, during that time, when I started working for Ioneer, they were members of the Women's Mining Coalition. So one of the founders of the Women's Mining Coalition was attached to Ioneer project in the past. She had something to do with the deposit in a prior ownership or something like that. So the path of getting it to where it was, she was on that path at some point. I don't know the full story, can't remember it, but that's how they were involved with the Women's Mining Coalition. And because I was kind of the first woman to be working out of the Reno office, they said, do you want to take this relationship on? I said, okay, I don't know what,
Yeah.
And the first year, so 2020, 2021, even in 2022, I was sort of a fly on the wall when it came to the Women's Mining Coalition. I participated in committee, but I was a bit, not sure. I didn't know what it was, right? I didn't really understand the politics around mining or how much mining is affected by politics.
Sure.
And so for the next sort of 3 years that I was at Ioneer, I had built this relationship with the Women's Mining Coalition. And I don't know if you know her. Her name is Sarah Thorne. Do you know Sarah Thorne?
I don't.
She is a environmental permitting. She just joined Centerra as a senior director for environment permitting. She's awesome. But she was the president of the Women's Mining Coalition at the time, and she called me on a random day in October, I remember, of 2022. I was at my friend's house in Atlanta. I was visiting. I was on vacation, and I stood outside on the driveway talking to her for like an hour, which is not hard because if you know Sarah and I, we both can talk a lot, and I love her. I love talking to her. She's so great. And she's based down in Reno as well, south of Carson. She's in Carson City area.
Yeah. Is it Galena down there?
Is it?
Oh, Minden. Sorry.
Is it Minden? Is that what it's called?
Dayton.
I don't know.
I don't know.
Somewhere.
I should know this. I don't know this.
South Carson City.
And
This sticks.
let's cut this out. And she, but she called me and she said, hey, look, we're really trying to sort of diversify the demographic for the Women's Mining Coalition and more in what people, if they didn't have any finance people. They had no one who was involved with the organization, I think at that time, that was really focused on finance. And so I said, sure. And so I sort of signed up to join the board of all things. And that was sort of my first getting dropped into the deep end of what the Women's Mining Coalition, what the politics around mining. I was just dropped in, right? And for the next 2 years, I've been involved in it. And I will say this, the first year of me being involved, I say this now, and I say it with all due respect. I think that organizations have, iterations, right? It's been around for 33 going on 33 years now. And the Women's Mining Coalition was formed in 1993 by 3 female geologists. There was some legislation that was happening at the time that was against the 1872 mining law. And so for them, they're like, well, you know what? We're just going to take ourselves to DC and we're going to talk to them directly, right? They thought they were going to go one time. They went back 6 times that year, and they've been going every year since 1993.
So for the audience out there, what does you or the people that join your group what does going back to DC help the mining industry with?
So WMC is a 501c4 nonprofit organization. We're a nonpartisan advocacy group, but we can lobby. It's just not the primary goal
Function
of ours.
for you guys.
Primary function. But essentially, our goal is to take miners from across the country to DC, which is not a normal place that they go, right? Because they have day-to-day jobs, and to talk to legislators and staff and agencies about the mining industry. Essentially, tell our goal is to tell our story, right? Like, I'm sitting here telling you my story. I have so many stories that I can tell to, people who I meet on the Hill and staffers, and that relate back to why mining is important, right? I tell people that my mom's side of the family is from West Virginia. My great grandfather was a coal miner. He actually died of black lung at the age of 43, right? But then I can tell you also too, guess what? Innovation and technology and those things do not happen. They're not as big of a concern now as was 100 years ago, right? And then I also tell people that my dad's side of the family is from Texarkana and Arkansas. And I spend my summers in Hot Springs where, Chairman Westerman from the Natural Resources grew up. And if you've ever been there, natural resources exist all over this country. And I've had this, I'm so lucky to have sort of experienced that from the East, I say Midwest, really the South, and then, the Western states. And so my experience, and I come from Texas, right? ERCOT is very big in Texas, right? There's a big conversation. The failure of ERCOT in 2021. My sister had a newborn baby at the time, and during that, she was sleeping in her car because so I have these personal stories,
examples. Yeah.
Exactly. So when I'm on the Hill, I can, that's the goal, is to tell your story and whatever that is, right? Or you could be a tailings engineer, right? This past year, we had a tailings engineer from Resolution Copper, and people love talking to her. I was like, this is like, you figure out very quickly, once you introduce yourself to people on the Hill, they'll start asking you questions because they're talking to their constituents. Yeah. They're not talking to lobbyists or lawyers or anything like that. They're used to that. So this is a very different sort of situation.
My question is, look, when you're on the Hill and you're basically telling your story and you're giving every example that you can, but at what level does the government and the staffers and the people that you're talking to, do they get ahead of the game and do some research on the history of mining? And I mean, this is something that the nation has to get behind and have in the school systems to understand what we're doing has been done for a long time. Mm-hmm. It's done more responsibly. We need it for everyday life.
We do have a checkered past, so we can't shy away from that, but we do need to be honest about where we're at today. But it's a whole hell of a lot better than
Julie Lucas always says, fear is fair. I'm like, got it.
Well, yeah, and at the end of the day,
she's a stud, by the way.
Yeah, I love her.
You can wait to pass these bills. I mean, it takes 19, 20 years to pass a bill or to get something permitted.
Yeah.
You've got 5-6 different managers that are trying to manage that project through time, and things change. And when we need the minerals, or when they're available and we quantify the resources, it shouldn't take that long. But we've got a lot of groups going to DC to advocate for mining, and it's like, at what point do we understand as a nation that we just have to educate everybody?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, and I've always thought about this in a way of, to find the solution, you have to sort of figure out where the problem started, right? And I think
technology.
Well, the other, yeah, right. But I think also too, we talk about the U.S. Bureau of Mines, right? The defunding of the Bureau of Mines in 1995-6 under the Clinton administration, which was a bipartisan decision. So I think the story goes, obviously I was not that old during this time, but the story goes that, the Democrats wanted to shut down the Department of Energy. And so instead of doing that, the Republicans sort of, said, well, here's what we'll do is we'll take the Bureau of Mines. And they took everything the Bureau of Mines was doing and sort of moved it into different agencies, right? So that's why you see or the mining program through NIOSH is at HHS, right? That's why you see the DOI owns something, the DOE owns things, and in the department, that's why those things are owned there. The key piece of it that's missing, though, is that research and development piece, right? This also comes at the time where we were starting to offshore manufacturing, right? So all of this happened. And again, this is just my opinion. Sure. I'm not speaking on behalf of the Women's Mining Coalition. Yeah. I sort of am trying to piece all of it together because I was not, I was barely alive at that point. Right?
Sure. Well, why can't you take the pieces of the puzzle that were there in the past and just put them back together and join and have a new foundation?
I have actually asked that question on Capitol Hill to staffers. I won't tell you which ones because I don't want it to be, but at the same, I've asked, well, is this going to, I've essentially been told the Bureau of Mines is not coming back. They can't get it done through Congress, right?
Sure.
And so what we have, Congress can't get it done, if that makes sense. We live in too partisan, I think, of a geopolitical environment right now.
I think we live in too much of a refined society to where we've landlocked ourselves or handcuffed ourselves to where we're trying to abide by these laws that nobody understands, even though we need to get things done.
Well, and I don't disagree with you. And I will tell you this, I think that's why it's also important that people like the Women's Mining Coalition, we take people to DC so that you can have these conversations. The real stories, because, and we're so lucky in Nevada that we have Senator Rosen and CCM that, I mean, again, they crossed the aisle during the shutdown. They're the only state of...
I was paying attention to that.
You know what I mean? And so, but they also understand that, we have 28 federally recognized tribes that are, most of whom I believe are non-revenue generating, right? So their funding comes from the government. When you shut down the government, you are affecting thousands of constituents in Nevada. And so for them, I spoke to Senator Rosen's office yesterday, where I'm working on them with something else. And I've built a good relationship with them over the last couple of years of going to DC. Really like McKenna, who works out of her office. And I said, how has it been going? She's like, we've been working like crazy. And I said, you know what I mean? And so, and I always feel bad for staffers because they don't get paid during all of that, right?
Sure.
Like
maybe the solution is for all of us advocacy groups to not go to DC and take the problem to them. Maybe they need to do a field trip into the mining regions and bring them to the problem.
Here's what I'll say too. I do think that the sentiment is changing in Washington, D.C. I really do. And I even think that was happening it happened under the first Trump administration, it happened under the Biden administration as well. They have different goals, if you will.
Sure.
Right. One is more of clean energy, whatever, but the mining industry is here to serve that purpose, right? We have to be. That's what we do.
The interesting part of all of that is that you need mining for all of it.
Exactly.
So it doesn't matter. For us,
right?
We're very nonpartisan as an industry.
And that's that's what I try to explain to people, is that you're going to find common ground somewhere.
Yeah.
I'm so lucky to, again, I said this on a panel back in Minnesota when we were there for Better in Our Backyard. And I said, I'm lucky to have a delegation that is very mixed. We have a Republican governor, 2 Democrat senators, and then, congressional members Congress members are mixed too. But everyone understands the importance of mining, right?
The only kicker would be permitting. I think that's where we're starting to see that be a lot better now, where we weren't before. But I want to step back and talk about one of the things that you mentioned, because we always talk about the mining has done a good job of hiding itself. And you mentioned that you got to understand the problem. Well, was it the Department of Minerals? Is that what it went away?
The Bureau of Mines.
Bureau of Mines. Sorry. I don't know why I said department. Anyway, the Bureau of Mines went away, but it didn't. And it kind of hid itself, right?
Well, but here's the thing too. Most of the people who worked for the Bureau of Mines either got absorbed into those agencies,
correct,
or they went to go work in academia. And the other thing too is that people who worked, the last director of the Bureau of Mines, I forget her name. I think her name is Ray Graham. She is still alive, and she is still. I talked to a student from the University of Texas who is doing her PhD thesis, I believe thesis on the Bureau of Mines, and I thought, oh, that's crazy, and Ray Graham sent her all of her kind of like documents and sort of the information and to support her through it. And I'm like, we have this person still here.
Active,
and I think it goes for the rest of the industry as well. This is just one example that we're going to lose all of this knowledge.
We are talking about that right now on a more finite level of the experience leaving the mining industry as operations, maintenance, things like that. But it's happening in the government too, right? And so these programs, they dissolve or they get hidden, basically, like you said. But the industry follows suit, and so we don't market.
Yes,
we don't promote ourselves.
That was my point: is that we've kind of now scattered. When we saw the Bureau scatter, we scattered. There's not a focal point for mining behind.
Think about think about other countries, right? So they have minister of mines. Australia, Canada, all these countries have a minister of mines. We don't have that anymore.
Correct.
We used to with the Bureau of Mines. However,
But we need to start producing all of our own minerals.
through the National Energy Dominance Council, they have, a team of people who have come on. David Copley, who's now with the National Security Council, he's an executive from Newmont who went to go work. And critical minerals are absorbed under that National Energy Dominance Council, but it's not specific. It covers everything, right?
But your permitting's over here.
Exactly.
And
and that's the thing too, is that again, there's not a specific person. I don't think that the Bureau of Mines I think that is a web that is going to be so hard to untangle. Also,
So how do you start up a new organization then? It's like if we can't get the old one working.
the Bureau of Mines still exists in statute. It's just not appropriated for
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I think it would actually be easier to have we've had these conversations and having a minister of mines type of role, executive through the office of the president, because I always this funny piece of history that I found out is that if you look at all the look at the cabinet members, right? And they're all attached to an agency, right? Do you know that the first 5 agencies that were ever created in America were Department of War, the State Department, Department of Agriculture, and Department of Interior? Because they had to deal with farming, had to deal with mining, right?
Yeah.
Health and Human Services, all those other cabinet members came after, right? Because this was what we did. It's how we, settled the West, right? And so I think that it's such an important role for the country that I completely agree that they need to bring back this role. I will say this, one thing that we're trying to do, and a lot of the other trade associations are trying to do, AEMA, National Mines, amazing organizations, they constantly are on the Hill in DC. And the goal is to codify these executive orders. You cannot run a government. What is the hearing? Yeah, it was a public lands hearing. And someone said, was it regulatory whiplash? Or I forget I'd have to look it up. But again, it's whiplash, right? Like you're changing from one, and they're running governments based on executive orders. The moment that if that administration changes, then it could all go away essentially,
100%.
right? And that's unfortunate, but that's a risk that mining companies have to deal with, right? And
why?
Exactly.
Well, but I also think that
if you codify those executive orders through Congress and make them, laws, then that's how we solve the problem. Right?
We can't even get laws passed. We can't get we understand that within our government open. We can't get people to agree on much. To where there's always a stalemate. It always gets pushed out. And it's like at some point, the industry's got to be able to take itself over.
Well, I think part of this, and to me, this is where the education, when you mentioned earlier, hey, we got to educate people. Honestly, the critical minerals conversation that everybody's having now, people are starting to realize that. Then you have groups like yourself with a lot of other groups that are pushing right now to educate, to tell stories, to get involved. I think that you have to have all of that.
We've been mining for hundreds of years. It's been the foundation of our nation. I mean, of the world, of the globe.
But it's changing the narrative to bad miners to need miners, and we're actually doing it good.
But at the end of the day, it's still needed. To where it's never gone away, to where it's not like that's a new topic that needs discussed and educated on.
It is, though, because I think we've went so far away from what is made, the computers, the headphones, everything that we're listening. People don't realize where that stuff comes from anymore. We've gotten so far away from that.
And I think also to think about, one of the biggest issues, and I want to talk about the SPEED Act.
What are we talking about? No, we're not talking about drugs.
No, sorry.
We don't talk about drugs on here.
No. But I'll come back to that because I do want to cover it. One of the major issues with you talk about the biggest issues in the mining industry, right? And it's, obviously we have no smelters for copper and we need copper. I love that we're here in Utah, and I'm actually going to the Kennecott mine tomorrow to see it in the smelter. I'm super pumped about that. Shout out to Jen Robison at Kennecott, Rio Tinto. But we talk about the permitting issue, right? Well, for operators, right, the mining industry is not wealthy. Like small juniors don't have a lot of money, right? That's the riskiest part of a project, and the least amount of money available. And so those people are the ones who are going to go through the permitting process. That is very financially, intense, if you will. But we're expecting them essentially to sort of fund that effort, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? Like we want them to fund the effort to change permitting. That's a really hard thing to do, especially when proponents, it's capacity. We've talked about this yesterday, like having capacity to accomplish something. Most companies think, and it's so multifaceted, that you have a company like Ioneer, for example. It's an Australian company. The executives are across the world, and the project is a great deposit. I think it's a great deposit, and the people there are wonderful, but you could have the commodity market, just sort of tank, right? And that immediately changes everything into this world of unknown. Every company is dealing with that. And so everyone only has capacity to handle so much, right? And there's only so many advocacy groups and, companies that can cover solving this major problem. I do think, I've said this before, I think that the government is stepping into, we really have seen that under this administration, but the government has to step in and actually help, because
what sense of urgency, in your opinion? Because
critical mass, right?
Well, right. we could just say that they're on it, but it's like, is it going to take another 10 years, 15 years? But nobody knows, and that's the hard part. Is like, we want that. What's the end date? Like, when can we see result?
Look,
I think you see the Fast 41. That's a step in the right direction. For sure.
And I've heard some successes from the Fast 41. Even there, so there's two parts of the Fast 41. You can either get into the entire process of Fast 41, which is the full sort of package, right? Or you can just be put on the Fast 41 dashboard, which essentially makes you known as a project to the permitting council, right? But they do not manage your permitting process. But essentially, it is sort of everyone's put on notice that this project is happening.
It's people that have their ducks in a row.
Yes,
get to the front of the line a little bit quicker.
Exactly. And I've seen that has actually helped. One of my clients that I used to work with last year, so I do consulting on the side. We won't even get into that. This has gone on way too long. I remember working with them, and they're like, we cannot get this permitting done with the Forest Service. We're struggling. Literally, they're now on the Fast 41 and they're moving forward. I'm like, oh, okay. So it really is helping. And that's not to say anything bad about the Forest Service or the agencies. Again, I have a lot of respect for the agencies because they're working at government pay for very intense jobs, right?
Well, one thing to remember too, the government, they don't pay very well, right? To where I'm sure their turnovers have got to be pretty high, to where they've got people changing positions, coming in new, and they're trying to take on new projects. It could have been there for 15 years, but it's rolled hands so many times that
I also don't think
the mining industry can't hit a moving target.
I think I'm in Nevada, maybe, and this is just my experience. Again, I don't want it to be like a broad statement, but I got a phone call from, I won't say which company, but a major out of Northern Nevada. Because I do land work. So I didn't tell you guys, but I'm also a registered landman through AAPL.
Cool.
And so through that group, a woman had reached out to me and said, hey, my husband works for this agency. We're sort of confused about this. We're nervous about the Doge cuts. And should we take this early retirement? What do you think about whatever? And I said, oh shit, you're about to make a major life decision on something that I didn't
take
even
the money
know.
and run.
And I think that's what they did, right? So you have all these early retirements. Again, it's like the Bureau of Mines. We're losing people that have so much industry knowledge, and it's not being transferred to the younger generation.
Your only hope is that
somebody's going to recognize that they have this knowledge, and they're going to come back as a consultant and charge 3 times as much. That's going to go right back. You know what I mean? To where
that's our best quality as a mining industry, is that the people.
We figured it out.
We tend to struggle to get out of the industry. If that makes sense.
Well, I think
that's a good thing.
I love the mining industry. At first I was very kind of, I don't know about this, right? Remember I told you that they're taking bets on me leaving. But I don't ever want to leave, if I'm being honest. I really enjoy it. And I love the people I get to work with. And
there's so many things to do.
Well, so as we because I know you got stuff to do as well. So I want to ask a couple more things, and maybe in closing, where do you see the Women in Mining Coalition going, and what does that look like for you in your role?
So when I took over this role 2 years, so I'm coming up on my 2-year anniversary with them. I was on the board prior to. When I got onto the board, I sort of looked at the organization being like, okay, this organization the demographic was, average age probably like 60, and that's nothing bad, just people who were very loyal. And I think the organization had needed a bit of, there needed to be reinvigorated. Or it needed some
a new season in life.
Exactly. And we're so lucky to have original founders. I mean, I can't speak highly enough about Debbie Strusacker. If you've never seen her present, one of the smartest people I've ever met. And she testified in front of Congress in September, and we were in DC. And I remember I had gone to meet the House Natural Resources Committee, just kind of doing some, catching up, touching base or whatever. And they were talking about Debbie, and they're like, do you know she could recite code? And I was like, yeah, I know. It's wild. Like, it's absolutely wild. But she, having someone like her who still wants to be involved and still is involved. And we, for me, what I saw was happening is that there were a few people in the organization who were doing a lot of work. And I think that there was a lot of people who wanted to be involved with the organization, but weren't sure how. Like, the organization didn't have a very it wasn't organized in a way that had a format or a platform, and that people could actually get involved easily and feel successful, if that makes sense, right?
Getting a little bit more structured.
Exactly. And because of my business background, I sort of went in and I said, this is what I want to do. Do not hire me. Do not bring me on, because this is what I want to do. And I think it's needed. And being a board member, I sort of had that support. And the president and the vice president at the time, so Emily Hendrickson, who's with Integra Resources, fantastic human being. And she's young. I think she just turned 30 this year. Hands down will be sort of a leader in this industry. I could foresee her being a CEO and executive. Yeah. She's awesome. And then Haley Ramber, it was our vice president, and Haley's now our current president. And and both young women, right? Haley was a new mom when she came onto the board, and she had the same she and we all have funny conversations about our phone calls with Sarah Thorne, and we all have a story because Sarah came to us and said, "Hey, we need to have this, a new generation sort of come in and try and do some different things with the Women's Mining Coalition." And we're in a post-COVID world. Also, I will say this too, the Women's Mining Coalition sort of financially benefited during COVID because we couldn't go and do fly-ins and we couldn't whatever, but we had these dollars that we weren't spending on fly-in and all that. And so instead what we did was decide to reinvest those dollars into the organization. We built a new website. I don't know if you've seen our website, but the old one, it
was what they could do at the time.
Exactly.
Oregon Trail.
I mean, it was what they could do at the time. And again, but here's the thing too. I have so much respect because this is a volunteer run organization.
Sure.
I am the only employee and I am part-time technically, right? So you're talking about people who are volunteering their time to do all of these things and keep an organization running for 30 plus years.
Yeah.
That's fucking amazing, right?
Like,
I have so much respect. And a lot of these women are still involved and they'll still reach out to me. Lyndsay, did you see this article? Lyndsay, did you do whatever? Yeah, great. You know what I mean? And I love that they are, and they still support us. And even if they're not as, even if they don't go to the fly anymore and things like that.
Well, I guess I will say is the last couple of years I've seen, just from my perspective, I've seen an uptick in involvement in people. I was talking about Liz Arnold last night, just different groups. I'm going, oh, they're connected here. So I've been seeing more recently too. So that's a feather in your guys' hat as well.
Well, and we wanted to, the goal was to sort of fix things from the inside out, if you will. I sort of came in and I, a little bit I've taken a little bit of heat for some changes I've made, and I don't regret them, if I'm honest. Sure. I think that where we are now is a great place, and we're still re-engaging ourselves with the industry. I think that people had forgotten how powerful the Women's Mining Coalition could be. We had sort of, I tell people in 2023 or 2024, there were 9 states that were represented in DC for the fly-in. This past year in 2025, we had 21, right? We sold out our registration because we just couldn't fit people into the conference center that we were using, right? And
good problem to have.
Yes. But we basically took those dollars that we had and we reinvested them in ourselves. We started re-engaging as well with the industry. And for me, again, I'm a very flexible person. I can go and do. So we're starting to show up at things. Right? We're going to conferences. I'm here in Utah and I work with Brian and Julie Lucas and Amanda Hilton, who we've talked about. I work with all of these leaders at the state level on the Western States Mining Collaborative Council. I don't know if it's Collaborative Council. Matt Vincent from Montana, Ben Davenport from Idaho. Let's just give a shout out to Travis Detail from Wyoming, right? I'm getting this experience to be a fly on the wall in these rooms with these leaders of these states and learning so much about their states that I never would have gotten just staying at Ioneer and being a part of that project. And through that, I don't go into these, sort of situations thinking, how do I get more members? How do I do any of that? My goal is truly to just engage and have conversations, and
things will happen.
And authentically, I will end up on a mining podcast, right?
Do you
you know what I mean? Like,
do you introduce yourself as a miner, or how do you introduce yourself as title to your staffers, or when you go back to DC? Because to me, those are impactful things, right?
Well, it's really nice. I can just say, I'm Lyndsay Wright. I'm the executive director of the Women's Mining Coalition. And then, I think before they used to, they really did get in the 90s, there's female miners. What? You know what I mean? And even to this day, you're going to find people who don't really know much about mining. That is kind of the case, right? I mean, look at me. I didn't know until about a little bit over 10 years ago, right? But no, that's how that's kind of, and I don't actually do a lot of the office visits anymore because I'm too much into the planning of it. I coordinate everything. I spend pretty much the days that everyone's out on the Hill fielding phone calls and text messages from staffers saying, can you push this meeting? Can you do this? I'm like, oh my God,
but you are a miner now. You're not oil and gas. You are a miner.
Yeah, no. And I love it. I think too, because I actually have a little bit of experience at an operator and then at a junior developer as well that moved into, it was an exploration company developer, moved into and is now fully into development, if you will. And I've also worked for an operator. So I've seen sort of the, I'm not an expert, but at the same time, I've seen the whole kind of.
You've got experience.
We talked about it a little bit last night. We need everybody. I mean, we need people that are going to keep track of the numbers so we can continue to mine. You need the people at the face getting the ore to the crusher to the, you know what I mean? Well, it takes everybody in this industry. And that's to your point, Dino. I think that we have to understand that it's a lot bigger than just one or two people or a handful of people outside.
All the support groups, everything that goes into the mining industry. Not just the guys in the mine or the ladies in the mine. It's everything that supports it. We are all miners. It doesn't matter if you're putting on muck boots or not every day. If you're helping the mining industry achieve the minerals that we're set out to get, you're a miner. And that's the message, in my opinion.
And then you guys do the advocacy portion of it. So how do people get involved if somebody was interested in getting involved in your fly-ins?
Right now, the easiest way is just to honestly go to our website. It's pretty simple. We have a form you can submit your information. Okay. It comes directly to me. We have one sort of bucket email that I manage, and it's usually me just filling everything. But we can get people involved. You can become an individual member. We do committees, a couple of committees throughout the year where you can come on and sort of learn from people like Debbie, who is still heavily involved. And she it's her day-to-day job doing this, right?
Sure. It's a passion.
Exactly. So for her, she loves writing a good support letter and comment letter. Oh yeah, she can whip those things out, and she's so great at it, right?
AI is great nowadays.
Do it?
AI is great. No, I'm kidding.
I'm telling you, like I'm so impressed. She's been doing this for years, and she's great at it, right? She can write a 40-page testimony, and you're like, holy crap! Like,
AI uses her for reference.
No kidding. She's a Chuck Norris, man.
I bet you they do. But so we have these people who have been a part of the industry for so long, and you can come on and sort of learn from them still and have conversations. And my goal has always been to sort of, I don't know if this was the vision for the WMC before, but for me, the Women's Mining Coalition is a organization of many voices, not one, right? Like I do not tell people that I am a member of the Women's Mining Coalition and I represent a piece of mining, but I don't speak for people in the Women's Mining Coalition. I believe everyone has an opinion. Again, we're nonpartisan. So we have, and a lot of people have opinions, if you can imagine. I work with
Can you get your group to agree on anything?
Oh yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
See, it's that easy, government.
Well, so what I was going to mention is I think this is such a cool thing for these mining companies, operations, organizations to get behind. If I wanted to support somebody in the industry, I could have them be involved with what you guys are doing for, I would say, a relatively inexpensive fee. And then on top of that, you get to highlight an individual and basically reward them for the work that they do. So to me, it kills two birds with one stone. If I'm a company and I'm trying to recognize Dino over here, I'm going to get with you guys and go, hey, I want to send him or her there and have them speak and tell their story.
Well, and also too, we go back to this, like everyone has, like companies only have so much capacity, right? It costs money to send people to DC, but also too,
it costs money to not mine.
Exactly. Fair enough. But also
take the financial hit wherever you want, right?
Also too, though, I think for the Women's Mining Coalition is a way for companies to support the greater good of the industry, right? Because we don't speak for individual companies. We talk about issues like workforce development, like defunding of the mining program through NIOSH. And gosh, I get real heated on that one. And then the Mining Schools Act, those are things that education, and those are things that we know that industry can really get behind. And so, right now I want to touch on the SPEED Act real quick. There's a hearing going on. This will probably air after the hearing. But there's a full committee markup over the SPEED Act, which is a permitting, essentially a permitting reform bill. Mm-hmm. It's a major bill. It's supported by 200 nearly 200 trade associations across the country in all industries, not just mining. And so this piece of legislation, I think, would be sort of landmark legislation if it got passed. And I think they want to get it passed very quickly. I mean, and it's bipartisan too. They have, there's a lot of bipartisan co-sponsors on it. So I want to say there's like 9 co-sponsors and that Democrat, Republican. And again, I don't know that there's a bill in the Senate yet or a matching bill, but it's a big piece of legislation that the industry is really getting behind right now. And I'm excited to see how that kind of goes. But that's another one that we don't really touch on legislation depending on what it is, if that makes sense.
It's such a touchy subject in general, right? Yeah. So you got to walk a fine line. I'm glad there's people there groups out there like you guys that are doing that.
Well, and the other thing too is that, again, you have exploration companies, developers, operators.
There's levels.
Different commodity, and also some are on public lands, some are on private lands. Yeah. So legislation affects them differently, right? 100%. So they may not agree with legislation when another company, even next door, may agree with it, right? And so those are things for us. I'm like, we'll leave that to the really smart people at AEMA and NMA because that's what they get to, that they're much better at that, right?
Sure. We're really good at getting on our own way.
That's their technical expertise. And for the Women's Mining Coalition, ours is really an opportunity for us to provide a platform for individual miners to come to DC, tell their story, and really advocate for the industry that they are a part of. That's
very cool.
Nice. Really it.
Well, before we get out of here, Dean, do you have anything else?
I don't. I enjoyed this conversation. This is something that we haven't touched on. I like talking about the government and, everything that we've got going, and somebody that's a subject matter expert. You live in Reno, that's close to home. So I just want to say thank you for coming on and taking the time.
I would not call myself a subject matter expert by any means.
And if you come to Elko, you have to come to the studio and check it.
Oh, absolutely. No, I will definitely. And I will happily recommend multiple people come on to this. There's so many. I'm so lucky to, in my job, have the last 2 years. I was a finance person, sat at a desk all day, right? I didn't leave the office. Everyone's like, who's this crazy girl in the office? And people always just tell me, you're an accountant? I'm like, yeah. And so now I get this wonderful opportunity to kind of go across the country, meeting people in West Virginia. I was in a underground coal mine couple months ago. I've been up to the Iron Range, saw the Hibbing High School,
Hell yeah.
And so I've been to, I'm here in Utah, right? I've been to Idaho and I'm headed to Alaska next year.
Cool.
Don't hold me to it, but November in Alaska that's scary for this Texan. But I've learned how people are so different. And I love that y'all's podcast is based on the people, because I'm so lucky to be able to do that as a job, basically talking to people, and learning their stories.
The opportunity for us to highlight all the different people that get into the industry, the reasons why they love it, and all the opportunities that the industry provides for us to sit down and podcast with somebody like you, that's genuine, authentic.
Yeah.
And this is why we do it.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you very much for coming on. Thank you for the conversations outside of this too.
Thanks to the brothers.
Cousins.
Brothers, cousins, uncles.
Hey, before we get off there, who's older?
Are you cousins or brothers?
Brothers.
Who's older, him or I?
Oh, there we go. There's okay.
Oh, she just pointed at Grover.
No.
I look older, shit.
Who's older? I don't know. You kind of look the same age, no?
Perfect.
Yes.
I love it.
Yes, I do too. Thank you for that. We're going to end on that good note.
I thought you were friends. I didn't realize you were brothers. No one said that to me.
Oh no, there's been almost fist fights over this podcast before. So,
well, check us out, guys. MiningMindsLLC.com, Facebook, all your social medias. You guys can check out Women Mining Coalition at www.wmc/usa.org. So thank you again. Adios.
Peace.
Thanks, y'all.
Thanks for listening into the episode, guys. We appreciate you out there listening. First and foremost, got to say thank you to Nikki Olson, Brian Summers for having us over at the Utah Mining Association. What a great event. Had the opportunity to present while we were over there too. But this is one of the great episodes that we took away from there. I'm going to recap a couple of highlights that I took away from Lyndsay's podcast. The first thing that I really took away was she's a true go-getter. She grinded in her early careers, put in the long hours, learned those hard lessons, and that early hustle paid off. Not just for her personally, but as a mining industry. Now she's over here advocating for us. Those are important years. And so as a young individual, whether you're in the industry or not in the industry, put in the work early. Put in the work early because those foundational years will set up the next 40 years in your career. And we've talked about it on the podcast before, but attitude and work ethic, right? Those are two things for a young individual to come into the industry. If you've got a good attitude and you work hard, you're going to have a long, fruitful career in this mining industry. The other takeaway that I had from this is connections. We talked that, mining's, it's a small world, mining's even a smaller world, but the importance of connecting with the right people, having those mentors. Lyndsay had a mentor, obviously, as you guys heard throughout the podcast, but that really led her back into the industry. That mentor accepted her for who she was, valued her as a person, and then opened the door for her into mining and ultimately where she's at right now, where she's able to lead and advocate for the industry. And I think the industry is better because of it. So if you're a young buck out there, reach out to some of these seasoned vets, see where you can improve, what options and opportunities are available for you. And if you're one of those seasoned vets, maybe help along that next generation of individuals. I know that I've had a lot of good individuals, mentors that have helped me through my career, both from a professional standpoint and a personal standpoint, and I couldn't thank them enough. They're now my best friends. So those relationships, those connections, hugely impactful, and I think you guys heard that throughout the episode here. And then lastly, I just want to spend a second to talk about the amazing work Lyndsay and her team are doing at the Women's Mining Coalition. Their fly-in programs are a great example of advocacy into action. They're bringing in real miners to Washington, D.C., so these elected officials can hear firsthand stories from the people who live and work in the industry every day. These conversations are huge. They're the human element in mining. They cut through some of those misconceptions that people maybe have of mining. And to be honest with you, it helps shape smarter, more informed policy decisions. So super excited to support that in any way that we can. If you guys are interested, your company's interested in looking at sending some people out with the Women's Mining Coalition for their fly-ins, check the links. We've posted their YouTube video for the 2025 fly-in that they've had. Reach out to Lyndsay Wright and her team. I think this is one way that our industry can really be impactful. And with that, guys, we appreciate you listening out there. If you want to support us, you can head over to miningmindsllc.com. Pick up some merch, pick up some swag for yourself. We're loading new items up on our warehouse every day. We appreciate you guys out there sharing, liking, commenting, swiping right. And if you're out there pounding roads, driving drifts, or pushing throughput, stay safe.
Yeah. This one's for the crews underground, for the haul truck drivers, the welders, the crushers, for the ones who make the world turn while nobody's looking. Mind and mind, let's dig in. Yeah, From the pit to the plant where the iron sparks fly, we talk grit, talk grind under that big sky. Dino and Grover got the mic turned high, breaking down stories money just can't buy. From the driller to the tech with the night shift eyes, we shine that light where the truth resides. Talk safety, talk struggle, talk pride inside. Man, it's the heartbeat where the people thrive. For Mining Minds, we dig a little deeper. Stories from the soul, not a corporate speaker. Human element, it's the real truth seeker. Every week we rise, podcast speaker. For Mining Minds, we dig a little deeper. Stories from the soul, not a corporate speaker. Human element, it's the real truth seeker. Every week we rise, podcast speaker. Yeah. Copper, gold, silver, coal, you name it. We break down the process, the blood that sustain it. Presumption flow, the culture, the cause. The ones who made it happen, never counting the loss. We the Joe Rogan of the rock and the dust. Talking tough love, respect, and trust. From the hall road climbs to the mill line hum. We bring the stories where the real ones come. Money minds, we dig a little deeper. Stories from the soul, not a corporate speaker. Human element, it's the real truth seeker. Every week we rise, podcast speaker. Money minds, we dig a little deeper. Stories from the soul, not a corporate speaker. Human element, it's the real truth seeker. Every week we rise, podcast speaker. This ain't no suit and tie talk. Nah, this the grease-stained boots on ground law. From hard times to the times they thrive. Mind and minds keep the culture alive. We salute the companies that back their crew, the ones that care and the ones that grew. From Nevada to Peru to the odds and minds. We link that world with the honest lines. Dino and Grover, yeah, they speak that truth. In a room full of miners, they the voice of proof. Plug in, tune up, and follow the signs. It's the sound of the industry. Mind and minds, we dig a little deeper.